In today's episode of Sophia and Theo, we're taking a look at narcissism, from its roots in ancient Greek mythology to its influence in modern society. We'll explore how it's evolved into a fixation on self-image, especially in the age of social media, and discuss the psychological and societal factors that fuel its rise.
Isn't it funny how, scrolling through social media these days can feel a bit like being trapped in a hall of mirrors?
Oh, totally.
It's just endless, perfectly posed reflections, you know?
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe, just maybe, it's making us all, obsessed with our own reflections a little too much.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why we're doing a deep dive into the heart of Narcissus himself.
Okay.
Well, not literally, of course.
Right.
But we're tackling narcissism using this really fascinating lecture as our guide.
Cool.
It takes us all the way from, ancient myths to, modern anxieties.
Interesting.
And speaking of myths, we obviously can't ignore the myth of Narcissus when we're talking about narcissism.
Right.
But the thing is, what I find really interesting is how this ancient story still, resonates today.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, beyond just the surface level.
Right. It's amazing to me how that myth isn't just about, vanity.
Yeah.
It actually goes deeper into this very human need for connection.
Oh, interesting.
And what happens when that need isn't met.
Yeah.
I mean, Narcissus, he's punished, yes, but a lot of interpretations of the myth actually emphasize the pain of the people who loved him.
Right.
And their voices are reduced to just these echoes that he never even hears.
Wow. That's actually a perspective I hadn't really considered before.
Really?
You're right. It highlights how this ancient story is still so relevant to us today.
Totally.
Because it's about that danger of, our own self-obsession causing us to maybe miss out on genuine connection with others.
Exactly. And I think that's what takes us beyond just judging, selfies at face value.
Right.
It helps us develop a much richer historical and psychological understanding of all of this.
So it's less about saying narcissism is like a modern invention,
right,
and more about understanding its roots to help us see our present moment more clearly.
Yes, precisely.
Okay, so, how far back are we going?
Well, did you know that even Plato, way back in ancient Greece, actually had some pretty interesting thoughts on narcissism?
Oh, tell me more. I'll be honest, I always struggled to get past Plato's allegory of the cave back in college, but maybe this will be more my speed.
Okay, sure.
So, what did Plato have to say about all of this?
Well, instead of just seeing narcissism as being totally negative, he actually saw it as a kind of a step in the process of self-discovery. He actually argued that looking at our own image and thinking about it could actually help us, understand these bigger, more abstract concepts like beauty and truth.
Huh. So instead of just being oh, I'm pretty, it's more about what is beauty even?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about using that self-reflection as a sort of springboard to ask those bigger, more philosophical questions.
Okay. That makes sense.
Of course, Plato wasn't saying that we should, just get stuck there.
Right.
But he did acknowledge that just having self-regard isn't necessarily a bad thing.
That is really interesting because we often just jump to narcissism equals bad without really, considering those nuances.
Yes.
And that's where the psychology of all of this gets really interesting because this lecture also talks about Freud.
Yeah.
And he argued that, a healthy dose of narcissism is actually essential for us to develop.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Right.
So it sounds like it's more about finding a balance.
Yes, precisely.
So it sounds like it's more about finding a balance.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
Think of it like this.
Right.
When we're infants, we're completely, absorbed in our own needs, right?
Right.
And that's totally natural.
Yeah.
But then as we grow up, ideally, we start to develop a more outward-facing perspective, and we learn to actually consider other people.
Yeah.
And so narcissism, at least from a psychological perspective, is kind of about getting stuck somewhere along that spectrum.
Okay, that makes sense. So someone who's really excessively caught up in themselves.
Yeah.
They might be kind of stuck in that earlier developmental stage.
Exactly. Yeah.
Emotionally, at least.
Emotionally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They might really struggle to empathize or prioritize anyone else besides themselves.
Yeah.
And that's really, for Freud at least, that's when it actually becomes a problem.
Right.
It's not just a quirk anymore.
Right, because it's impacting other people at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than just labeling anyone who likes taking a selfie as a narcissist.
Right. And that's really crucial because this lecture doesn't actually let modern culture off the hook.
Okay.
It jumps right into the whole debate around selfie culture.
Okay.
But it does it with this really like surprising nuance.
Oh, okay. I'm all ears because honestly, I was bracing myself for a phones are evil rant.
Right.
Social media is going to be the death of us all.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, this lecture actually encourages a much more like thoughtful approach. It points out that like throughout history, right,
Yeah.
people have always been worried about their image,
Right.
and they've always looked for validation from others.
Totally. Yeah.
So like that's not new.
Right.
What is different now is the technology that we have that just amplifies all of these tendencies, you know.
Okay, that's a really good point. Like, people have been posing for portraits for centuries, right? It's just that now it's a selfie with a filter that's posted for, thousands of your closest friends to see.
Yes, exactly. It's the scale and the immediacy that's different.
Yeah, yeah.
This lecture actually even quotes the philosopher Christopher Lasch.
Okay.
And he called, our current moment the culture of narcissism.
Oh, right. Yeah. I've heard that phrase before, but I'll be honest, I've always been a little fuzzy on what it actually means.
Okay, yeah, so Lasch argued that it's not just like individual vanity we're talking about here. It's actually this societal shift
Okay.
towards this like really intense focus on things like self-gratification and like instant results.
Oh, okay.
And he was saying that this impacts literally everything from, how we have relationships to how we engage in politics.
So it's like this feedback loop almost, right?
Yeah, this growth.
Where society is telling us to focus on ourselves, and then because of that, we demand even more of that self-focus, which then just reinforces the cycle.
Precisely.
Wow.
And technology has just become this accelerant to this whole thing.
Yeah.
Social media gives us these platforms to build our own, like, personal brands. And we seek validation through things like likes and follows.
Yeah, and let's not pretend that we don't all kind of enjoy that little ego boost every now and then.
Of course, of course.
Hard.
But the lecture really encourages us to ask, like, okay, well, what are we sacrificing to get those digital pats on the back?
Right.
Like, are we losing sight of what it means to have a genuine connection with someone?
Right.
Or authenticity?
Yeah.
Like, even just the ability to just be in the real world without needing to, like, document it for our followers,
That's so true. It's so easy to get, like, caught up in the need to project a certain image online.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't really reflect who we actually are.
Right.
Or, like, what truly makes us happy,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the lecture actually kind of transitions from just like diagnosing the problem
Okay.
and starts to offer some potential solutions.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
One of the like key takeaways is that we need to find a balance
Okay.
between like self-care and caring for others.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about just swinging it from one extreme to the other.
So we don't have to, like, delete all of our social media accounts and go live as hermits in the woods.
No.
But we do need to be more mindful.
Exactly. We can still like value ourselves
Yes.
and our own well-being without it having to come at the expense of like empathy and connection with other people,
Yeah.
It can be as simple as like literally just putting your phone down
Yeah.
when you're having a conversation with someone.
Yeah. And, like, genuinely listening to what they have to say.
Right.
Or, just reaching out to a friend just because you care about them.
Right.
Without some other ulterior motive.
It's about bringing that awareness of like self versus other into our actual like daily interactions, right?
Yes.
Both online and offline.
Exactly.
It's almost like we're trying to find this path,
Yeah.
right, between these two extremes instead of getting like stuck in this idea that it has to be one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not about self-obsession or, like, complete self-neglect.
Right.
It really is about finding that balance, which,
Yeah.
admittedly can be really tricky.
Yeah.
Especially these days.
Yeah, especially when we're constantly like bombarded with all these images and messages that are telling us to just focus on ourselves.
Right. Exactly. So, like, how do we escape that hall of mirrors we were talking about?
Well, the lecture actually ends
Okay.
with this really powerful question.
Okay.
It asks, in a world that's so obsessed with image, is it even possible to find true connection?
Wow. That's a question that really makes you, like, stop and think.
Right. It's something that we really need to be thinking about, like both individually, but also as a society.
Right.
Because if we're all so busy just like curating our own little online personas,
Yeah.
are we actually like losing sight of what it means to have that genuine connection with other people?
Yeah.
Flaws and all.
It's almost like that idea of echo chambers. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Where Except instead of just like filtering our news feeds, we end up filtering like our entire perception of the world.
Yes.
And the people in it.
Exactly. And that's the real danger of unchecked narcissism.
Yeah.
It isolates us.
Yeah.
It prevents us from really truly seeing and appreciating the like vast array of different experiences and perspectives that are out there.
So it sounds like we need some sort of like shift in perspective, right?
Yeah.
A way to look beyond just the surface. But how do we even begin to do that when we're surrounded by all of this, right?
Yeah.
All these images, all this self-promotion.
Well, the lecture actually suggests
Okay.
this really like deceptively simple but kind of radical act.
Okay.
And that is cultivating empathy.
Okay, so like putting ourselves in other people's shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's, I mean, it's easier said than done, right?
Totally.
Because we all have our own baggage, you know?
Absolutely. But, you know, empathy isn't about just like absorbing the burdens of the whole world.
Yeah.
It's really just about listening with an open heart.
Yeah.
Being present for other people. And really recognizing like our shared humanity.
Remembering that everyone has their own story, right?
Exactly.
Their own struggles, their own joys.
Exactly. And maybe through that really genuine effort to connect with other people, to understand what they're going through, we can actually start to like break free from that narcissistic spiral.
Because like when we're focused on connecting with other people authentically, we probably don't need like as much external validation, right?
Exactly.
And we probably like crave that genuine connection even more. It's definitely a journey worth taking. I think by like confronting our own reflection, but then also like making that effort to recognize the needs and the feelings of the people around us.
Yeah.
We can really start to create a world where that kind of connection is really at the forefront.
Yes.
A world that's less focused on me and more focused on we.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That is a point worth pondering, I think.
It is.
Well, this has been fantastic.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive on narcissism has been so illuminating, so thank you so much for guiding us through all of this.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a really fascinating exploration.